Oh boy, I sure do love video games. I'm gonna make a Let's Play channel. Fuck. Well, that could have gone better, but I had fun at least. Guess it's time to go outside and enjoy the true beauty of life. This sucks. Well, Let's Plays weren't for me, and the great outdoors is too naturey and good for me for my liking, but I still really want to talk about games, so I guess that's what I'll do.
Video games. The greatest waste of time I've ever dedicated my life to. I'm not even upset about that. Games are great. It's why we're all here. For some of us, it's just a fun little hobby. We might spend an hour a day playing, or every single waking moment.
So today I want to cover a bunch of my gaming memories and my history with all the consoles that I've got, and just sort of praise video games as a whole for what they've done for me, and what a big part of my life they've been.
The year was 1995. I was born! Look at me go. I was quite fortunate as I was somewhat born into a gaming family in a sense. I don't know the actual timeline of it all as I was just a toddler, but what I know is by the time I was old enough to hold a controller, I was playing games. So much so, I don't actually know what my first ever game I ever played was. The reason for that, and why I say I was born into a gaming family, is because by the time I could play games, we already owned a Super Nintendo, a Sega Mega Drive, and a PlayStation, at least. Obviously the Sega and Nintendo were bought for my older brother, and probably the PlayStation as well, but my parents actually had their own favorite games on the systems too. My dad loved more adult-oriented games on the PS1, I just can't remember the names of any of them, and my mum loved Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo, and 40 Winks on the PS1. My brother and I just played anything and everything we got for all three systems, so by the time I could form my own thoughts and was a conscious human being, I already had plenty of time with all three systems. Starting with the Super Nintendo, these were the main games that we had. The ones that I played were Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Kart, Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, Micro Machines, Biker Mice from Mars, Sunset Riders, Tiny Toons, and Pack Attack. I dabbled in the others, but my brother was more into them. Obviously, my brother and I were born too late to be blessed with the original NES, but I think having this decent of a library for a console as fantastic as the SNES is something to be happy with. My favorites were Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country 3. I played both of these games to death, and I think my mum even 100%ed Mario World at one point in time. The Super Nintendo was definitely the better system and had the most fun games out of all of our childhood systems. The fun music and graphics of Mario World and Yoshi's Island, the multiplayer of Mario Kart and Micro Machines, the comfortable controllers and cleaner design of the console, the SNES was definitely the favorite as a kid. Moving on to the PS1, whilst this was mostly what my dad played, my brother and I did get our fair share of playtime with the system. We had a chipped PS1, so most of the games we played back then we never retained throughout our lives like we did the Super Nintendo and Sega. But I have done my best to rebuild my current PS1 games collection to match what we used to play and beyond. Of course, everyone knows the big boys of this system, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Crash 3 being my favorite game on the system. But other games I remember playing a lot were of course the other two Crash games, Spyro 1 and a bit of Spyro 2. And whilst I'm sure I played Spyro 3, I didn't remember a single thing when I played the Reignited trilogy for the third game, so I guess I didn't play it enough? Croc, 40 Winks, Rugrats Search for Reptar, Rayman, Bugs Bunny Lost in Time, Bust-A-Move, Gex, GTA. There's so many games we played on this system. And who could forget CTR? This thing rivaled Mario Kart for years in our household, even by the time the N64 rolled around to compete. I can't wait for the remake coming out later this year. There's a few games I've been trying to get my hands on that I must have played on the chip system that are a bit expensive for my taste currently, such as Kula World. I hope I pronounced that right? I remembered playing a game where you played as a ball collecting fruit on weird blocky platforms, and I finally found the name of the game a few years back, and I've been trying to search for it on eBay for a decent price copy ever since. The PS1 was great, and although the original controller is a bit uncomfortable, I loved the 3D graphics and the variety of different games on the system. But for me, it never quite hooked me the same as the Nintendo, probably because mascots were everything back then, and whilst I loved Crash, Spyro, and Rayman as the mascots of the PS1, there was only one mascot that was going to steal my heart. Enter the Sega Mega Drive. Probably the system with the least amount of games I actually played as a kid. We've plenty of them, and I have no idea what 80% of these are. And this isn't even all of them. But if you know me at all, you know why this system is a big deal. It was the birth of my favorite franchise in gaming, and the home of my favorite childhood game. I give you Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2. Having both of these at the same time, I always found Sonic 1 inferior, even as a kid who didn't know any better, so whilst as an adult I can appreciate it for what it does and what it started, I've always loved Sonic 2 way more. And I'm sorry, but musically and visually, Emerald Hill is a better starting zone. Eat it, Green Hill Zone. Sonic is probably what made me fall in love with gaming. His attitude, his speed, his cocky and cool personality. This is what I wanted to be as a kid. No, not a blue hedgehog, no, I mean cool. And I guess fast? The cartoons and games did make me want to go running a lot. Anyway, we weren't blessed with Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles as a kid, so I never got to experience them until years later on the GameCube, so maybe that's why I prefer Sonic 2 over 3 to this day. But other than Sonic, I did dabble in Echo the Dolphin, Streets of Rage, Altered Beast, a couple of these football games back when family tried to get me interested in football. The Sega had its own unique look and sound to games. You just kind of knew, yep, that's a Sega game when you were looking at the screen and hearing the music and sound effects. The controller was and still is a blocky, awful mess in my opinion. But when all you need is left, right, down in any of these 3 buttons to jump or spin dash, it gets the job done. But overall, the Sega was nothing but Sonic to me. That's all I ever needed and all I ever wanted. Sonic 2 was my favorite childhood game, but the Sega wasn't even my favorite system. And this began the journey into gaming that I had no idea would end up in capturing me and falling in love with for the rest of my life. Next up for our family was the Nintendo 64. I was still very young at the time, so it kind of falls into the same nostalgic memories as the first 4 consoles, but I do remember knowing that it wasn't the same as the other systems. Perhaps because of this fucked up controller. Now that's harsh. To be fair, I actually really like the N64 controller. The stick feels a bit weird to move, but all the buttons are very responsive and clicky. I like buttons with a good click, not those soft-ass buttons. As for the games, it was clear that this was a fantastic system. The games looked very impressive, and so much so that I even managed to get scared from time to time from games like Banjo-Kazooie. But excuse me, fuck this spooky-ass hub area. I may have put the game down as a 9-year-old because of this, and also because I got stuck on this water rising section, and only managed to beat the game years later on the Xbox Arcade version. But speaking of Banjo, in hindsight, it's probably my favorite N64 game, but as a kid it was most likely Mario 64. You can't go wrong with this classic. I don't care what anyone says about the controls. I love it, and will 100% it every time I play it. We also had Mario Kart 64, Bomberman Hero, Diddy Kong Racing, Pokemon Stadium, and maybe a few others. I remember loving the N64 and playing it often, but we had the smallest library of games on this system compared to any other. My own library now is only just barely a little bit bigger, with games I missed out on or only borrowed as a kid. Looking back, the fact that there's such a small amount of games I'd probably play on this system is probably not the best, but I think the quality of the titles says plenty for the worth of the system, at least to me. Now it gets interesting. 2 very big systems entered the fray with the Nintendo GameCube and PlayStation 2. I can't remember which we got first, but my brother definitely got the GameCube before I did, and I got the PS2. But after various fights over who gets to play what and when, I ended up getting my own GameCube for one of my birthdays shortly after. The PS2 I remember being a big deal. Obviously systems got sequels, NES to Super Nintendo to N64, N64 to GameCube, and so on. But since none of them was Nintendo 2, it never sank in that they were sequel consoles. And again, we never owned an NES, so Super NES never sank in either. But the great and almighty PlayStation is back. It's the PlayStation 2. That shit was the first time I heard people talking about the upcoming consoles in the playground. I got this sweet-ass silver one, and I'm much more fond of it than the standard black one. Although the DuoShock 1 existed on PS1 after a bit of time, the DuoShock 2 was the staple controller for the PS2, and it was damn good. It had more solid face buttons, these comfortably firm thumbsticks, and satisfyingly clicky and responsive L&R buttons. GTA, Vice City, San Andreas, Sonic Heroes, iToy, Buzz, and SingStar are just some of the games I used to play all the damn time on this system. Nowadays, I've gone and bought plenty of odd games for the system. I didn't really have shovelware or know what it was as a kid, but I bought a good chunk of these games to play on DuoShock. Go watch us play this shitty game now! Click the icon in the top right of the screen! Anyway, my favorite game was probably Sonic Heroes. Despite it being multi-platform, this was the system that I first got it for, and have great memories with it for the PS2. But Vice City is a close second. But again, I did mostly play the same games over and over again on the PS2, and it's all I ever really needed. Though if the disc ever failed to read, you know damn well I'd shit myself.
No. No. No! Not again!
The GameCube. Now this is a console. This system came with some of my favorite games of all time, and was my favorite system for the longest time, up until whatever the hell this thing is. The GameCube had the most interesting and comfortable controller we'd ever been blessed with up until this point. A giant A button, which meant you always knew just by feeling you were on the right button. Tiny ass B button, because only pussies quit, even menus. And the X and Y buttons, while similar in shape, are tilted in unique ways that, again, you always knew which button you were pressing just by touching. It was great! I never knew any games that used this C stick. Even though I got my first Smash Bros. Game on this system with Melee, I was a kid. The C-stick meant nothing to me back then. Gotta hit that directional input and A button, give me that chargeable smash attack, yo! Nice firm-ass left stick, and these grooves made such specific directions so much easier to get right. Plus, this sound is just so satisfying. The L and R buttons were odd, but for unique experiences like in Mario Sunshine where it was pressure sensitive, it was incredible. And again, this Z button, didn't know what it was for other than dropping items in Smash. This controller is borderline perfect in my opinion, but what about the games? The previously mentioned Mario Sunshine, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Sonic Adventure DX and Adventure 2 Battle, Sonic Mega and Gems Collections, Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness, Mario Kart Double Dash, Freakout. There's so much good shit on this console! I like so many of these games almost equally, but Mario Sunshine and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle are definitely the toppest of tiers of games for me. But Nintendo wasn't done there, because up next for my gaming desires was the Nintendo Wii. This was the first time I remember being aware of an upcoming console release, and my brother and mum asking me if I wanted it for the upcoming Christmas, back when it was known as Nintendo Revolution. I was somewhat indifferent at the time. There was nothing else I really wanted that year, so I was like, yeah, alright, whatever. But what I didn't know was that I was about to receive one of the most popular consoles of all time. Christmas rolls around, I set up my Wii, and for some reason my whole family is trying to play games with me. A simple to understand controller, you point at the screen and it reliably tracks your movement, your rotation, your motion with responsive and firm buttons. Everything on it felt natural, except the 1 and 2 buttons, but most games had those as secondary actions if anything. And with the console came Wii Sports. This game was groundbreaking, primarily controlled by your movement of the controller with 4 great games and 1 game that required an additional nunchuck to play multiplayer with, so we didn't really touch it. This was a sign of things to come. Who knows what's coming next? We certainly weren't disappointed with games like Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Sonic Unleashed, Wii Play, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Super Paper Mario, Mario Party 8. There were so many great single-player and party games in this system. Brawl and Galaxy were definitely my favorite to play, and as time went on, I got more and more and more games. Fucking countdown! For Nintendo Wii! I rest my case. The Xbox 360. Now this is where I spent the majority of my teenage years. The Wii was great and all, but the Xbox was something different. I'd never been interested in the Xbox brand before, but after visiting my friend's house and he offered us to play Gears of War 2's campaign co-op, I knew that I had to have an Xbox. There was something about it and Gears of War that just struck me in a way I'd never felt before. So for my next available birthday, I used my birthday money to buy my own Xbox. Most bundles were Viva Pinata and some other shit, but the one I managed to get had Trivial Pursuit, good little party game, and Burnout Paradise. I like my racing games, and this was such a steal to get bundled. This game was so fucking good! The Xbox 360 had a fantastic controller, arguably beating out the GameCube controller for comfort. The triggers felt a bit better too, probably because the games wouldn't really suit a controller like the GameCube's, but the similarly sized buttons and how good these thumbsticks felt to use, this was a great controller to use. And so began many days of just mindlessly playing COD and various other games with my friends online. Years of my life spent on this system with games such as Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 2 and 3, Black Ops 1 and 2, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, The Run, Most Wanted, Gears of War 2, GTA 5, Sonic Unleashed's Better Port, Sonic Generations, Rock Band 2 and 3. This system was amazing! I definitely love just playing any CODs with my friends, most on this system. COD 4 and MW2 come to mind. And the Xbox Live Arcade giving me HD access to all classics like Banjo-Kazooie and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and my first taste of Banjo-Tooie, this was a fantastic system, and I'll never forget the times I had with it. In contrast, the Xbox One was a complete fucking letdown. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like this system. I got it the Christmas that it came out, with the Day 1 edition as well, because I was excited for what the next Xbox system could be like, but the bland Xbox dashboard and ruined Xbox Live menus, nothing felt as user-friendly as the 360. The Windows 10 look just looked generic and boring, and having to install games to the hard drive for every single game made it even worse. Spending hours at a time just waiting to play a damn game, and then only having like 4 games readily installed because it took up all the 500GB hard drive space that was available on the Day 1 edition, nothing felt intuitive about this console. And the controller was such a poor downgrade for me personally from the 360s. Same basic idea, but the face buttons felt smaller, the thumbsticks' heads felt smaller, and I felt a bit more noticeable dead zone when using them where nothing happens when tilting slightly. Bumpers that work better at this part of the button but not here, making it way more uncomfortable to play with. And even the triggers, they just feel weird. I really hate this controller. The D-pad's nice, I guess. And I didn't even have any memorable moments or games on this system. COD Ghosts, Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, that's about it. And out of them, Black Ops 3 was the only one that was consistently good. Even GTA 5 getting a graphically improved port didn't save it for me, because at this point me and most of my friends had already played GTA to death, and we're just kinda sick of it. To this day, I basically never turned this thing on. Kind of a bummer, but I'm just not drawn to it. Especially because when I do, I'm gonna have to delete more installed games just to play any damn new ones. Black Ops 3 was probably my favorite game on the system, but I ended up playing it more on the upcoming PS4 in the end anyway. So to forget that miserable part of my life, here's the Wii U! Okay, I know most people don't like this system, but I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed my time with it. The gamepad is a big fuck-off controller that seems a bit too bulky at first, but the buttons are really satisfying to press and are in good spots that it feels natural to play while holding it. You could play games on the TV or on the gamepad, or some games made use of both in their own unique ways. It was a very cool idea, and personally I really enjoyed the games on the system. Mario Kart 8, Smash Bros. Wii U, Super Mario 3D World, Shovel Knight, Yoshi's Woolly World, and Super Mario Maker. Similarly to the N64 of old, whilst the library wasn't large, the quality of the titles was immense. Smash Wii U was where I began trying to get somewhat competitive in Smash. Mario Maker was so exciting when it came out, and Mario 3D World holds a special place in my heart. And games I didn't even own like Nintendo Land, there's so much to this system that was just pure dumb fun, and that's what I look for in my video games. But Smash Wii U and Mario 3D World, those were my favorite games for this console. We're nearing the end of my systems, but after some work as an extra giving me a bit of extra money, I figured, fuck it, let's buy a PS4. I was interested in the Black Ops 3 Special Edition console since it was a unique look and a cool controller, and a 1GB console. And I managed to get it for cheaper than resale price off of eBay, for a brand new unwanted copy. It was just a good bit of luck, and I was very happy with it. Whilst the controller took me a long time to get used to, I did learn to appreciate it. It's quite a sharp controller. Not in the sense that you'll cut yourself on it, but instead of rounded edges like most controllers, the face has this almost corner-like design to it. It's a touch uncomfortable running your hand over it, but the rest of the controller is very comfortable. The triggers are very pleasant to click in, the thumbsticks are very responsive and much better than the shitty Xbox One controller. Though I feel that the way the face buttons are right next to the flat corner-like design thing, it can be a touch uncomfortable to use the face buttons at times. For games where you might do the claw position with your hand to use different buttons much more efficiently, this controller is not claw-friendly. But the touchpad, whilst I didn't get it at first, is a very cool touch. And is very natural to press in as an additional button for the games that use it. The system itself seems to run way better than the Xbox One, and not to mention this home screen looks way better than the Xbox One. And even though I still have trouble using my friends list and party chats to this day, I still prefer them to the Xbox One navigation shit. I'm sorry, fuck this. This is awful. But the PS4 has been good to me. I bought it because of the change of contract with COD, where all the DLC comes out first on whatever system has the contract, but I also had in the back of my mind, maybe one day Crash and Spyro will come back. And a few years later, Crash Insane Trilogy and Spyro Reignited Trilogy came out. I know these games are multi-platform, but you gotta admit they feel right at home on the PS4. I similarly don't have many games for this system. I've got the most recent CODs, The Last of Us, and Detroit Become Human, which I still haven't played those two. I can't pick favorites just yet as this is still a relevant console, but the upcoming CTR Nitro Fueled definitely looks like it's going to be a favorite. And I had some great times on Black Ops 3 as mentioned before. I was very happy with this console. Then I got the PS3. Alright, I know that sounds weird. As my brother and I were in our teens, when I got the Wii, he got a PS3. I wasn't really allowed on it much, I only had Sonic 06 for it, which I was happy enough with. But since it was his console, I didn't get to play much of it. I never really felt like I needed one either, and so I only got one a few years back as a way to record PS1 games easier for Let's Plays and shit. Unfortunately, I can't really review the system as a result. The dashboard is okay, I guess, but I never got to experience it properly like most folk did, and my PS3 controller I got with the console pre-owned from Sex, the thumbstick's rubber twists when you use it, so it's a little bit fucky. But it's basically the DuoShock 2 from the PS2, plus this little button, so it's pretty solid. Again, getting it only recently, the only game I owned for it was Sonic 06, so I guess that's my favorite PS3 game? Which I don't even have because my brother has it in England, but I did buy the Uncharted games when I bought the system and someone gave me Sniper Elite. Never played any of them, but hey, PS1 games! And this brings us to the final system, the Nintendo Switch. This shit was hype. When it was revealed, the Switch had me beyond excited. I even went to a pre-release hands-on event in London for a day just to play the console early because I was so excited. And it was so worth it. Great wee trip, got to meet up with someone I knew online by complete chance and spend the whole day with them playing Switch games.
That's the edge of the map, so if you go down there, you will die.
But this ain't about the pre-release nonsense, what about the now? This is still the current console of the generation, if console generations still exist. But it's only 2 years old as this video gets made. The Switch's main controller is the Joy-Con, which is why it really excited me. It seemed like the Wii Remote times 10 in terms of potential, though it was a bit small for my liking, as are the buttons and the sticks. But if you were a smart boy or not boy, you got a Pro controller. Now this is a fucking controller. This is by far my favorite controller, rivaling the GameCube controller. Couldn't tell you which I prefer. But the sticks are perfect, the buttons are well sized and firm, the bumpers feel great, the triggers click in almost instantly but also have room for pressure type stuff like the GameCube controllers, and it's so comfortable to hold with a good bit of weight to it. And it even has fucking motion controls! This is a fantastic controller, and well worth the price in my opinion. In terms of games, you've got Zelda Breath of the Wild, Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Odyssey, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Pokemon Let's Go, Yoshi's Crafted World, Snipper Clips. This system already has amazing quality in games so early in its life. We're still mid-lifespan, but Smash Bros. Ultimate is definitely my #1 game for this system, and Mario Odyssey being a solid second. And I could play these two games all day, every day, for a long-ass time. The Switch's impressive games, huge potential, and being able to play it on the TV or on the go just makes it good enough to me to be better than my previous all-time favorite console, the GameCube. And I'm so glad that the torch has passed to such a worthy system. And that, my friends, is my review of all of video games. Or at least a brief summary of my history and my memories of the systems I owned throughout my life. I obviously didn't include PC or handheld games and systems here, but to summarize, Game Boy I like, Game Boy Color I like in color, Game Boy Advance very cool, Game Boy Advance SP was just the best. DS was awesome, but I broke my original and lost my second one. DS Lite is just a better DS. DSi, I don't understand why. 3DS, you're great. 3DS XL, you're greater. New 3DS, why again? And new 3DS XL, why again but better? My favorite games for the systems are basically each generation of Pokemon game respectively. And PC is cool and all, but I'll always be a console gamer at heart, no matter how beefy my rig continues to get. And it's a beefy boy, let me tell you that.
But that's it all. That is what gaming has meant to me for my entire life. I can easily go into detail about each and every system, controller, and game that I shown off today in much more grand detail, but for a general grand sweep of my entire gaming history, I think this was a good way to start, and I hope it was at least fun and or interesting to listen to. This is just a taster for the types of reviews I want to do here, and I hope it was at least a good insight into what my sort of style and production will be like. And now that we've broken the ice with my entire history of gaming as a whole, next time I will pick just one game and go into much more detail about it and do a proper review of that specific game. I don't know what game it's going to be, but we'll see next week, of course. And since I've shown off pretty much every game I own today in my video, feel free at any point to suggest down in the comments whether you'd like to see a review or a let's play of any of the games that you saw from any of the systems that you saw. Of course, I still have handheld and PC games that I didn't show off in this video today, but literally, suggest anything and I am more than welcome to try out these different ideas. But yes, next week, I don't know what we're doing, but we'll see, won't we? Thank you everybody so much for watching and for listening to what was basically just a giant story. Now, if you'll excuse me, all this talk of video games has reminded me that whilst games are indeed great, you do need to get outside and take a break every once in a while, at least to get a breath of fresh air or something.